Good morning, everyone. Welcome to your Rangers Review morning briefing for Thursday, the 24th of April. I'm Derek Clark. I'm joined this morning by Joshua Barry. How goes it, Joshua?
Goes well. It's nice here as well as I can see. It's very nice down in your parts of the world, Derek.
Yes, it's sun is out again. So factor 50 will need applied when I go out with the dog a little bit later on. But yeah, cannot complain. It's been lovely. But apart from that, the odd day or two, trying to think when we were in Bilbao, it was sort of overcast for a bit. But I think the weather over here has been better than much of Spain. So long may that continue. And of course, it was bright where down Ibrox way last night because lots of Rangers news, positive Rangers news as well to get our teeth stuck into. Before we do that, a quick word for our podcast sponsors, S1 Jobs. If you're looking to hand in your transfer request, folks, then head over to S1 Jobs and upload your CV today. They've got thousands of jobs across Glasgow, Edinburgh and the surrounding areas, so you'll find them on at S1 Jobs. And remember, if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you're a subscriber to the channel to get your comments in. It's totally free, but if you're finding you're not being able to get your comments up on my screen here, at least, then you need to hit that subscribe button, so make sure you do. Right, where shall we start? I know you and Chris recorded a video after the fans forum last night conducted by Patrick Stewart was there and gave us an update on all things Rangers, more off the field than anything else, where the US takeover is concerned. He also confirmed Rangers moving to Umbro as the kit supplier from next season. And also big news is that Rangers have confirmed the appointment of Kevin Thelwell as sporting director. He was, he's been at Everton. His contract is up in the summer. He's 51 years of age. Previously been at the likes of Wolves, New York Red Bulls as well, and been at Everton for a good few years now, but he will depart and join Rangers, and he will be the first sporting director at Ibrox since Ross Wilson departed back in 2023. Joshua, your thoughts on this? I think we touched on it when I was on with Stevie a little bit yesterday. Vitally important, Rangers got a sporting director in, and I think we can now start to look ahead to a summer of recruitment and a managerial search.
Yeah, there's loads to get into in regards to this, Derek, and we'll have more on the website about how exactly the move came to pass and some more detail about Thelwell as an individual. But first and foremost, if you speak to people about the sporting director position, and if you speak to people maybe in isolation of this Rangers situation, the phrase that is quite often used is safeguard. It was used around the time that Ross Wilson departed. I remember Michael Beale saying it in a press conference. It's an important factor to safeguard the long-term interests of the club. And if you look at Rangers over the past couple of years, one thing they've not had is safeguarding the long-term interests. There's been lots of different plans, lots of different voices, sometimes not enough with the amount of change that's happened at executive level. But I think, as Patrick Stewart said in his Rangers TV interview, when it was announced as a result of this consultancy firm that Rangers should go back to that model, there'd be people who would say that was quite a costly exercise from the club as a whole to, move away from a model, move towards a football board, and then pay a consultancy firm to go back to it. But that's maybe a separate conversation. But the phrase he used was, we're basically an outlier in terms of other elite European clubs and not having this position. So I think there's a lot of mysticism surrounding sporting directors, Derek. I don't think that they are more important necessarily than the managers, but they're just a vital cog in the machine for how football is now, maybe compared to how it was 15 to 20 years ago. And if you operate without one, not just in terms of having that person in the building, but something we've spoken about a lot, who's there to properly critique the manager, who's there to hire and fire the manager, because that's not a role, that's not roles or responsibilities that Nils Koppen, even as technical director, has had. Who's the head of the football operation side of things, if you will. In the last few years, it's been the manager. And if you have three managers in the last 2 years, as Rangers have had, you get a situation like this where it's just, as we've seen before, an amalgamation of different ideas and press and stop and start again with different people's ideas. So it's crucial that Rangers have got a sporting director in, a long exercise, and ultimately a painful one for them, I think, operating without one. And yeah, Kevin Thelwell has a lot on his to-do list, as we'll discuss a little bit today.
Yeah, he seems to have a decent track record, I think. Well, it's good that Rangers have brought in an actual sporting director instead of someone that's either been promoted to a role they've never done before or come in from outside, and it's a brand new sort of role for them. So he does have experience at a top club in Everton, and also, of course, in Wolves. He's got a track record of bringing players in and selling them on for higher fees, which is good. It's what we've been calling for some time at Rangers. And yeah, by all accounts, he's very excited about joining Rangers. And yeah, it looks like it's going to be one that look like Rangers getting their house in order with regards to that. On the roll, he said yesterday, Thelwell, this is a huge honour for me to be joining a club with the size, stature and expectations of Rangers. From the first conversations, it was clear to me how ambitious the club is. I'm excited to play a part in shaping its next chapter. I know how much Rangers means to so many people, and that brings both responsibility and motivation. Rangers needs to win. That's the bottom line. There's a strong foundation already in place, and I look forward to working closely with the teams across the men's, women's and academy programmes to build something that delivers consistently. Of course, there's important work ahead, especially in the men's first team structure, but we'll approach it with energy and purpose. While change takes time, I'm confident we can make real progress. I can't wait to get started. So Rangers have sorted that out. You mentioned there, I think the first team structure obviously takes priority over anything else, but you will now look to identify a manager, you'd imagine, Joshua. I've seen McCoist yesterday on Talk Sport suggesting Sean Dyche would be an excellent appointment.
Oh, come on, Ali.
I think perhaps
tell you who would like that. Chris Jack would like that. Way back in the day.
A Dyche man, is he?
Well, way back. I don't want to throw Chris in it, but I have a vivid memory in this very office of discussing with him before. I think it was before Clement's appointment, and he was Dyche in at that point. So he might have reverted his opinions, but wouldn't be my first pick. See, just in the point you're making there about Thelwell has a track record of selling players on and big fees. Again, I think this comes in sometimes to a bit of the mysticism around the sporting director role, because any good sporting director will be able to identify good players. Some of them will have more of a scouting background. Some of them might be a former player. Some of them might rely on a kind of head of recruitment to who they really trust, and therefore they reap the rewards of that because they are the name that is ultimately attributed to buying and selling, Derek. But the last few months for me at Rangers demonstrate why you need a sporting director. Because the club's issue at the moment, I would say, has recruitment been completely flawless? No. But have Rangers signed some good players, and do they have a number of assets in their squad? Yes. If you go back to February, think Hamza Gaman scored all these goals. Chefty's attracting interest from Chelsea and other clubs. And Ciala's come in for free out of the blue. Nico Raskin, as we've said before, as we understand it, he's the most likely to go this summer at this moment in time. And, he's another player that has value attached to him. Mohamed Diamande, there's 5 off the top of my head, right? But I think then when you have another restart of the head of the football operations, which has been Barry Ferguson as manager, you have moments like, Diamande moved out to left wing back, which doesn't destroy his value in one game. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate. But it doesn't help Rangers progress. You have Igaman not playing in his best position for a while. You have Ciala not playing. So again, that's, as I said in my column at the weekend, that's not to throw it all and say it's Barry Ferguson's fault. But it's just, you need that long-term plan, a long-term perspective to make anything work. And Rangers have been constantly caught in trying to go long-term and then going short-term. Again, think back to Michael Beale, given so much influence over that summer window, and a couple of months down the line, Derek, he's out the door. There's no real football person that's at the top of the club once Beale goes out the door making decisions. And then what are you left with? So does my point make sense that the sporting directors, of course, we should judge them by who have they sold, who have they bought, but I think a lot of it is about how do they work in the parameters they have. And Thelwell's worked in difficult ones at Everton and done well, so that's a good sign. How do they maybe join in with what's already being done? Because I don't think Rangers are necessarily... They're a club that need vision internally and leadership at the moment, but I don't think they need to press reset on everything. I think they need clear guidance and, again, authority above a manager to go in one direction over a number of years. He seems to have the leadership capacity to do that. He's worked in a difficult situation at Everton with these points deductions, and how many relegation battles have they had there? Like 3 in the last 4 years or something along those lines. So
Everton, they're always down there these days.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good positive signs there is what I'm saying. But I don't think it's just a case of he comes up and he rolls out a scouting book and says, we should sign this player, that player. I think that comes into the mysticism about it. Clearly, Rangers do need that person to give them stability over a long number of years and effectively try and make sure we don't see what's happened continuously over the past couple of years, which has always been a reversion to thinking about the short term.
Yeah, what do you think this appointment does for Nils Koppen? Of course, given more responsibility at the time, a good number of months ago now. Now that Thelwell has come in, do you see Koppen staying on, just as looking over the recruitment side of things, or how do you see his role sort of evolving now?
Well, I think there'll still be some unknowns around exact responsibilities because, as said in the press release yesterday that Rangers put out, Thelwell isn't in the building today. He still has this time to see out as Everton's director of football. Yeah. Now, Everton are bringing in new people. David Moyes is a big part of their recruitment. And again, that's another example of how different clubs will do recruitment differently. So will Thelwell not be speaking to anyone at Rangers or planning until he officially starts the job? I would be very surprised, and I don't think that is going to be the case. But if you look at it in isolation, we reported back in, I think it was November time, when Nils Koppen got his promotion to become Rangers technical director. There's two sides to that, Derek, because I understand that, number one, he'd had to do a lot of the responsibilities anyway because of, again, outside of Philippe Clement. He lost Craig Robertson around that time as well as head of football operations. So it was a real vacuum of people who could take on onus and responsibility inside the building. And also, it was somewhat, as we reported at the time, as we understand it, a bit of a realignment with the expectations of the role he was coming into, because this football board, moving away from the sporting director situation, there was just so many changes. And a detail we've spoken about in the past is that, as we understand it, that contract renewals this time last year, it's been a very long season, they didn't actually fall on the kind of director of recruitment's remit. They weren't within his responsibility. So the theory is, if you're going to be in charge of squad planning, Derek, you have to have a bit more autonomy to make it work, to make it happen. Again, not to keep quoting back to ourselves, which is really a good thing to do in the world, but we reported at the time that when Koppen got that promotion to technical director, it didn't rule out an extra football executive appointment. Now, that was before Patrick Stewart came in. That was during the very early preliminary talks with the US consortium. So I don't think it's a situation or a case of it's incompatible. I actually think that long term there has been an idea that this would happen down the line anyway. It's just taken quite a long time because we know where Rangers have been. They've had this internal football review and there's not been really stability anywhere. So it will be interesting to see, for example, Thelwell, is he a sporting director who's going to oversee and he's going to entrust recruitment to Koppen, for example, and still be a voice in that process and an important voice in that process, but isn't involved in the day-to-day of that because he has a lot of other facets to oversee? And also an interesting point, which we'll cover a little bit more in one of the articles we'll have on the website over the weekend, Derek, is what does it mean for the summer window? Because that is not far away, and by now clubs are putting plans into practice, and with Thelwell not officially in the door for a little bit of time, there's a lot of work to be done on this squad. If you think of the players who are out of contract, if you think of the players who are coming back on loan, that's a good number of players before you even think about moving on sellable assets like Nico Raskin or Hamza Gaman. So I think it's going to be quite a busy summer at Ibrox.
Yeah, he may not have officially started, but he'll be busy right now, Kevin Thelwell, about looking at recruitment in the summer. I'm sure conversations have been had with Nils Koppen and the Ibrox hierarchy about that, because it has to be simply. Love this. Rangers on Tour says, Carlo Ancelotti is leaving Madrid in the summer. Bring Don Carlo to Rangers. That's a good shout for manager. I think I would be quite happy with that. Ancelotti at the helm. Listen, he's managed Everton, so knows the British game. Get him in with Big Dunk as his assistant. I would be very on board with that. That would be absolutely sensational. This comment here, Andy McBain is still with a new regime appointment. He will be, Andy. And interestingly, that statement from the club yesterday and the 49ers enterprises. I'll quickly read it if you weren't tuning in to last night's show. It read on Sky Sports News. It read that Rangers and its existing controlling shareholders are in productive conversations with the two lead members of the consortium, Andrew Kavanagh and 49ers Enterprises Global Football Group, about the potential for the consortium to acquire control of the club and to inject additional capital. These discussions reflect a shared recognition of the importance of Rangers FC's long-term direction, ambitions and management. Additional capital, that is music to my ears, Joshua.
Yeah, Chris and I, speaking last night, said that's probably the phrase that will stand out. It's a significant moment that this public statement has happened. Chris reported on the website on Sunday or Monday. I told him last night I was getting mixed up with my days then, and continue to now that that the 51% had a route to that had been established, contrary to some other noises that maybe that was going to be difficult, and it's now this takeover is in the final stages of completion. So I think ultimately, Derek, it's just a very exciting time for people who are going along to Ibrox, who are watching, and as it should be, because the last couple of years has not been filled with phrases like inject additional capital, has it?
No.
The timing not obviously inconsequential or coincidental in terms of this fans forum that took place last night. In terms of will Thelwell be the new regime's man? Again, as we've discussed before, we believe that Greta Steinson is the 49ers technical director and will be a predominant voice at the club, splitting his role and responsibilities with what else he's doing for the 49ers, namely involved obviously at Leeds. He was involved in the interview process. That was also led by Patrick Stewart and Sportsology, who were the consultancy firm kind of leading this technical external review of the football operations at Ibrox at the start of the year.
Yes. Now, interestingly, I've seen reports as well about Thelwell, and this comment from Danny says, "Morning, boys. Is it true Thelwell wants to bring in the academy director at Everton to Rangers?" This is reports that I've seen Gareth Prosser, who is currently at Everton. By all accounts, Thelwell said to be keen on bringing him to Ibrox. The youth pathway is something that we've discussed at length on various shows, as Matthew raises a point here. The number one task would be to create a visible pathway for our youth to come through into the first team. It's been poor for 20 years. This would be an interesting appointment. Joshua is a guy who knows. He's not only had him at Everton, he was at Wolves as well.
Yes, yeah. Well, I think it was Scott Burns reported that last night. And it's interesting because this really ties into what we were just discussing there about, does Thelwell come in and rip everything up, or does he join in with some of the things that are already happening? Because Rangers Academy's been under quite dramatic changes, certainly from in trying to solve that pathway to the first team. Since January, we reported on it a lot at the time, but that's why you've seen so many players who were in the B team go out on loan. It's why the under-18s are now training quite often with the Rangers first team. It's why you see people like Aidan McCallion on the bench a number of times under Barry Ferguson's management. You've also had, obviously, Finlay Curtis step up. We had the story on the website the other day that Rangers are in talks with Bailey Rice to try and extend his stay at Ibrox, which is due to end in 2026. You've got Mason Munn. Paul Ncio was involved at the start of the year, hasn't been as involved as of late. But that was quite a radical step to go. We're not going to do the B team because it's not working. We don't think the Lowland League works. This Best v Best programme was never really got going and it has never shown signs it's going to work. So it's a new approach to try and loan out a number of players who maybe aren't going to make it at Rangers until they make their next move in football. And then those who are, the likes of Curtis or Rice, try and expose them to first-team football early and give opportunities, while also then having the 18s train up so that they have a bit more exposure and really investing in that group. And obviously, again, as people will know, there's a high possibility that the under-18s league, Derek, becomes an under-19s league in Scottish football as well, which might help players' development because it gives them that little bit more time. So it's going to be intriguing to see what happens there, what the back end of that is, because the comment's right. The academy pathway hasn't been good enough. But you have seen in the last number of months players start to make the jump up, and that also ties into the fact, are they going to be given a chance between now and the end of the season, for example, in these games that don't really have too much of a consequence? I'd be interested to see more of Rice and Curtis as well, who I thought did really well in that start he had up at Pittodrie against Aberdeen recently.
Yep, definitely an opportunity for the young lads to play the remaining games. A comment came in as well from You Can't Do That, saying, would you play Munn for the rest of the season, or do you want to see more of Kelly? When I was on the Q&A show on the Extra channel on Tuesday, I did say I would be tempted to play Mason Munn from now on. I can understand why Barry might just keep Kelly between the sticks. But for a look into the future, I know we've just seen Munn in that Fraserburgh game. I would be tempted to start him on Saturday. Joshua, what's your view on that?
I think he's had an injury. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's had an injury as of late, which maybe makes that unlikely. I'm not going fully down your path of play Xander Hutton ahead of James Tavernier. I don't think that's going to happen, and you can justify that or put your point across in a second. But I do agree. The big one for me is Oscar Cortez. Rangers are signing him. He's been fit now for the longest period of time since he was injured. He needs exposed to play minutes, and you can say he didn't do well against Aberdeen, but it was 45 minutes in a half where Rangers hardly had the ball. So I think that's a hard place to judge him on. So I'd like to see the likes of Rice and Cortez and Finlay Curtis. Do Rangers go with the strongest team possible against Celtic and the Old Firm? Yes, and understandably so. Even I will not contend with that. But
it'd be different if they run a semi, Europa semi.
Yeah, it would be, and obviously they're not. But so are you telling me you'd like to see a complete overhaul between now and the end of the season?
Yeah, I honestly don't see any point playing James Tavernier at right back when Xander Hutton is itching for game time. I don't know what we learned from playing Tav. No disrespect to Tav, absolutely fantastic servant to Rangers, but if you get a young lad that's looking to make his way in the game, let's play him, see how he can cope with pulling that blue jersey on. So I'd be playing him. Any other young boys that are, like you said, Bailey Rice, certainly. Finlay Curtis, absolutely. Clinton Enciala starts games.
Yeah.
And if there's any others, you mentioned Paul Encio. We've not seen him for a wee bit of time. But these sort of guys should be getting a chance between now and the end of the season. If they don't get an opportunity, I don't see the point of them being at Rangers, because when we don't want to be in this situation again, when 5 games that we can be doing without. I know someone mentioned to me the other day there, how can you be just wanting the league to be over, Derek? Well, it's simple, really. We just want the summer to get underway and get next season started, because this has been nothing short of a disaster domestically. So the quicker it's over, the sooner it's over, the better for me. But just don't see the point in playing James Tavernier. Apart from maybe the Old Firm game, I don't see the point.
It's a fair point, and you are right. Like, you don't learn anything new. The games don't mean anything. I'd extend that to the likes of Dessers. Should Ham Zigerman play between now? Does it matter? Is that really going to put his value up if he's because they're inconsequential games? So Chris said to me yesterday, only 5 more pre-match press conferences, and when you're counting down pre-match press conferences, that it's that time of the season. But it's felt like a domestic season that's almost never started. I don't know if you remember the opening game of the season well, Rangers 0, Hearts 0. It was pretty forgettable. But I just remember that game after it being like there wasn't much there. There wasn't much to whet the appetite, and it's kind of remained like that. There's been a couple of big wins against Celtic. Aside from that, I can't think of many times we've come away from a game this season and thought that was a really complete, strong 90 minutes.
There was people telling me at the start that before a ball was kicked, of course we had the stadium saga, but saying they're writing off the season before a ball was kicked. And I was like, well, that's a bit early, a bit premature to be crowning Celtic champions when we've not played a game. But
they were right.
It's never felt like Rangers have been in a title race really this season, which
they haven't. They haven't. Johnny, who's come into the office since the start, he did call it. I remember his column. When was it, Johnny? The first day of the season, you said that Rangers weren't in a title race and they needed to plan long term. Shrug of the shoulders. He knows. So he got so many things right, he forgets it. But that's been right, and that again ties into the fact that had Rangers had the right manager and the right structure last summer, then this season wouldn't have been what it really has been. Not a waste is maybe too extreme, but they've not built towards anything from a playing style, from a overarching kind of point of view. Yes, some players are in a better place, and you'll be able to sell Nico Raskin for more money than you could last summer. You'll be able to sell Hamza Gaman for far more than you brought him into the club for. But you take my point, Derek. It's not as if they've had maybe the right manager in place and they've got close this season, and you think next season with a little bit more investment here, and here, because that's what Gerrard is the best comparison of when a project has been built at Ibrox in recent years, and that's effectively what he did. And the club did every summer. What do we need to add to take us that a little bit further? Whereas this summer, I think Rangers are not asking what do we need to add to take us further. They're asking what's our starting point, what's our style, what's our manager, and how do we get this in position for not just the start of the season, but Champions League qualifiers, which could take place in mid-July.
Yeah. This point, but Blue Nose Johnny says, was Ancelotti at Everton at the same time as Thelwell? He wasn't. Johnny was there just before Kevin Thelwell joined. Just sticking with the topic of managers, and slightly left field, but maybe not, Joshua. Reports in the Daily Mail yesterday, which I found quite surprising, but there's a bit of a clamour down south, down Ellen Road way, that Leeds may be looking to sack Daniel Farke, despite getting them back up into the Premier League, and looking for another manager for their stint back in the top flight. And rumours are they're basing this on the fact that he struggled up there with Norwich in the past. I think it would be incredibly harsh to do that, really would. And I seen a Leeds fan sort of forum yesterday down south, and the legend that is Eddie Gray saying that he deserves a chance to take Leeds in the top flight, and I totally get that, and I would support that view. But if he was to become available, I'd be taking him at Ibrox.
I think that would be a harsh decision, but I don't mind if football clubs make harsh decisions, because they've got to make the right ones, don't they? And if Farke, he hasn't survived in the Premier League before, has he? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, so to be fair, Norwich is different to Leeds, I think, in a sense. I mean, Norwich always come up and go back down. I mean, Alex Neil struggled when they got Norwich up. Previous managers, I think Chris Hughton struggled as well. Norwich, I mean, they're not a team that are going to go and sit mid-table and push for Europe.
But then Bournemouth or Brentford, or I think these sizes of clubs, I don't think it's impossible. You know, Bournemouth.
If you task someone to getting you up into the promised land, and he does that, and then you just, thanks very much, see you later, bye.
But that's that. But okay, I'll throw it back to you though. If you've got the opposite, if you're a supporter of that team, and you have the choice of being sentimental to a manager who will take you down, or a manager who will keep you up, at the end of the season, I think you know which. Yeah, but if you do know, in my hypothetical world answer I'm giving to you here, you do go for that. And teams like Bournemouth have survived. Teams like Brighton or Brentford, and often what they do, if you think back to Brighton with Chris Hughton, is they do establish themselves for a bit and maybe change their style. The three teams that have went up this season are going back down. All of them have kind of tried a certain approach that hasn't worked. Russell Martin. Maybe could things have turned if he'd had longer? I don't know. Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, and who's the third team? Leicester as well, who've chopped and changed.
Yeah,
but I don't think there's clubs need to break that cycle of going up and down, right? So I don't think there's it's necessarily a bad decision to go. We're going to go for a manager who will keep us up for a season, and then we build from there. Or if you're Thomas Frank, we are going to play a certain type of style for a couple of seasons and move from there. As I say, Brighton did that with Chris Hughton, is his name I referenced a moment ago. So anyway, that's a separate argument. It would be harsh, I agree. Could Rangers do a lot worse than Daniel Farke? Yes, I think they could. He is probably, I don't know a lot in detail, but a track record of managing teams who have a lot of the ball. And that is the top of my checklist, Eric, for the next Rangers manager. So yeah, it sounds like an interesting one to keep an eye on at Elland Road.
I like him. I covered it back in the day when he was a Norwich manager. I was sent down to cover a few games, and great guy to deal with. His football was pleasing on the eye, and very charismatic guy as well. I wouldn't be opposed to that if Leeds were to make a decision on that one. I think we've got a couple of games left, don't we, before the season is wrapped up, and it will be intriguing to see what Parag Marathi and co do with regards to that. And of course, we'll be keeping a close eye, as we always do, on events here. Now, folks, if you want to learn a little bit more about Kevin Thelwell, we'll be speaking to an Everton podcaster early this afternoon, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We'll get it out as soon as we possibly can. He'll give us an insight into his time down at Goodison, and I'm sure it'll be interesting stuff. But for now, we'll bid you farewell. Big thank you to you all for tuning in to the show. Big thanks to Joshua as well. If I don't speak to you later on today, then enjoy your Thursday, whatever you are doing, and we'll chat to you again soon. Bye for now.